talk Detroit sports, and we're going to lead it off with the Lions and the Chiefs. Are you going to that game?
Yeah, I'll be covering the game for the Detroit Monitor newspaper. The Detroit Lions, of course, unbelievably are 2-0-1. Maybe not so unbelievable the tie with Arizona, because most people had penciled that in for a victory, but more hard to fathom beating the Chargers and the Eagles on successive weeks, Scott, to take 2 wins into that game against the Chiefs. And the hot Chiefs, of course, 3-0 they are on the season, as you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting matchup for sure with the Chiefs. I saw them in Week 1 against Jacksonville, a defense that was expected to be really good, but Patrick Mahomes can make anybody look very bad. But I have a feeling that this game is going to be interesting because it's the first time I believe he's playing indoors on natural turf. So, I think that could factor into it. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, well, no, I agree, Scott. I mean, these Chiefs wins have not been perfect by any stretch. Neither have the Lions victories, of course. But that being said, I know that the Kansas City defense against the rush has not been effective at all. And if the Lions can get Kerryon Johnson moving and get him into the groove and get that running game going, the Lions can surprise the Chiefs in some areas of that game. Now, that being said, they have to, of course, shut down Mahomes as far as his long-range and short-range passing goes, because the Detroit defense, the secondary, has performed pretty well this year. So I think those are my 2 key matchups, Scott, are going to be, can Detroit's running game, move that ball against the Kansas City front 4 and the the linebackers, and also can the Lions secondary stand up to Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes is an interesting bird. I mean, listen, how many times have you and I seen a team within the first 4 weeks of the year? I saw him first, you get him next, but let's face the reality. Now, let me give you a few things that I saw down here in Jacksonville. First of all, Sammy Watkins has been in a little bit of a funk. However, I think that he could be a potentially dangerous weapon. I don't know how good the Lions secondary is, but, he's one of those kinds of people that, he could have a breakout game. A guy you should probably pay attention to that I think is going to have a potentially good game or start breaking out is a guy by the name of LaShawn McCoy, imported from Buffalo.
Okay.
And he might just be that running back that can cause a little bit of havoc for that Lions defense, and everybody knows what a great football mind that Andy Reid is, George.
Well, that's true. I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, there's so many dynamics going on in this Lions-Chiefs matchup. Here's one for you. Remember the bitter rivalry, Scott? You'll remember this when Lamar Hunt and his Chiefs tried to steal away Thanksgiving Day game from Detroit and the Ford family. And what a bunch of crock that was. Remember those days? And the Lions couldn't stand the Chiefs and Lamar Hunt and his backhanded dealings trying to get the NFL owners to take away Detroit's early Thanksgiving Day game. There's a lot of bad blood between these franchises and also the 2 front offices. Don't kid yourself.
Well, let me take that a little step further, George. When I was living in Arizona, I covered the Arizona Cardinals against the Dallas Cowboys. And you know who I spoke to in the Cowboys locker room?
No.
Jerry Jones.
Jerry Jones, the owner.
And you know what question I asked him, George Eichhorn?
I bet I know, Scott Morgan-Roth.
Well, what did I ask him, George? Huh?
Did you ask him about the precious Thanksgiving Day traditions in Detroit and Dallas?
Well, for a guy that stood up in my wedding, yes, I did. Okay. And for a guy that I actually started this show, that I began working on this show 40 years ago, yes. And you know what Jerry Jones told me in the locker room, okay, at Sun Devil Stadium, because they hadn't moved into their new gigs over in Glendale. There was no way he was going to ever let Hunt wrestle that game away, and he was going to, and everybody can tell you right now that Jerry Jones has an awful lot of power in that league. His influence, okay, is so strong. that he's one of the major reasons that Los Angeles got the Rams over there, because Jerry Jones managed to know that his dealings with Stan Kroenke were good, and he convinced everybody to go back to L.A. So Jerry Jones was a very influential individual, and he said that he would fight like heck to make sure Detroit never lost that game. So how did it end up working out? Okay, they ended up making a third game at night, and I believe the Kansas City Chiefs ended up hosting one of those games.
Yes, they did, Scott Morgan Rounds. You're absolutely right. NBC grabbed onto that with their Thursday night / Sunday night football coverage, and now there is a third game on Thanksgiving, and you're absolutely right. The Hunt family was rewarded. I believe they got it in maybe the first year even
Right.
that Thursday night Thanksgiving deal started. But you're right. Jerry Jones stood up with broad shoulders right next to William Clay Ford, owner of the Lions, and put down any scuttlebutt that Lamar Hunt and his family wanted to do, because that tradition is not going to be tampered with. Detroit is happy with that early start, as you know, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Dallas is happy with their start, 2:30 p.m. Central Time.
Right.
And those two owners say, do whatever you want with that night game, but don't call us. We'll keep our time slots where we have them. And you know, Scott, as well as I do, and your listeners, that Fox and CBS usually rotate, those two games, depending on the opponent for the Cowboys and the Lions, respectively. And this year, it's another Lions-Chicago Bears matchup, I do believe.
Well, the amazing part about it is, in recent years, everybody used to think you had an AFC team against the Cowboys, or vice versa. But nowadays, I believe Fox and let's see, you got not NBC, but who does the second game? Fox and CBS. Okay, they've had 4 NFC opponents in those first slots, so they don't care. They're looking for the matchup, and let's not lose sight of the fact that Detroit has the annual Thanksgiving parade down at Woodward, so Thanksgiving is a very big tradition back home in Detroit for sure. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, they do. You're right. I mean, that's a totally different subject matter, having the parade. But Detroit also, by the way, I just found out this week, over 150 stations are going to carry the Detroit parade this year, which is a whopping number, because what they do is they sell the rights to, I believe it's just 1 hour, maybe it's 2 hours of the parade, and so they have the Detroit parade showing across the country. That, again, that's a totally different subject matter. But I wanted to also mention to you that, because of the NFL schedule, of course, we know that these AFC teams, only come into those NFC stadiums, once in a blue moon. Because they got to work their way through the 3 or 4 conference divisions now.
The Blue Moon, just so you know, George, is once every 8 years.
Oh my gosh, that's right. I'm sorry, Scott. I thought it was.
Well, that's all right. You didn't have to say what the Blue Moon was. It doesn't matter. Bottom line is they rotate, so they come once every 8 years. So it doesn't matter.
Once every 8 years.
They play each other twice in 8 years, and that's how they rotate. But yeah, it's no big deal. It's what it is. But regardless, these networks are going for the matchup. If they think you got a NFC, or Chris Berman would say Norris Division matchup between any of these teams, they're going to jump on it all day long. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
No, it is a rare treat for Detroit fans to see the Chiefs and vice versa. And, I do applaud the NFL. They got a good schedule. They do a good schedule. And also, by the way, Dallas is coming into Ford Field, too. So the Lions are getting Dallas, the Giants, Kansas City, and basically the Chargers, of course, don't come that often. That's another team they got this year at home. So Lions have a very difficult home schedule, as well as some tough road matches coming up, of course. It goes without saying that the eyes are focused on Monday Night Football, October 14th. The Lions, of course, will be in Green Bay and Lambeau Field to face the Packers.
Well, there you go. Another NFC Norris Division matchup between the state of Michigan and Wisconsin. you and I could definitely talk about the tradition there. With that said, okay, let's go to the sport that's on Frozen Pond, and I'll talk about the Detroit Red Wings. We got Steve Yzerman now running the show back in Detroit. You know, obviously they're playing preseason games. I imagine they have a couple more to go before they start skating them up for real. But what are your early impressions of Steve Yzerman, George?
Well, my early impressions are fairly good. I think, there were some people that were mad because Dylan Larkin, the young star of the Red Wings, wasn't anointed or appointed captain this year. But I have it on a very good sources. Stevie is taking a look at the whole operation and what's going on. And he is not going to jump at anything yet, such as appointing a really young captain at 20 or 21, whatever Larkin is. And I think that's a good sign. Yes, he did have a chance to tinker a little bit with some of the scouting staff in the front office, but not a whole lot. So I think Yzerman is, he's going to soak all of this stuff in like a sponge. Of course, he has his eye on talent as well. And what I mean by that is these guys are fighting for jobs, Scott, and your listeners. The Red Wings are fighting. I mean, these exhibition games and these training camp for the Red Wings have been a little bit more grueling and I think much more competitive because there's a lot of guys they're looking at like they do every year, but there's a lot of young talent, okay? A guy named Michael Rasmussen, for example, he has scored 2 goals tonight, and Detroit is leading St. Louis right now, I believe, 4-1 in the NHL Kraft Hockeyville game up in Calumet, Michigan. And this kid, keep your eye on this Michael Rasmussen, okay? He got a cup of coffee in the NHL last year with the Red Wings, but he very well could earn a spot on that, second or third line this year. Rasmussen, like I said, has scored a couple goals tonight, and so has Anthony Mantha put the puck in the net twice. So what you're seeing here, folks, and Scott, are a lot of young players that, Ken Holland gets the credit for, of course, drafting these kids, but now they're ready. Some of them, not all of them, Scott, but some of them are ready to take the step into the NHL.
Well, I mean, again, Holland laid the groundwork for him, but everybody knows that Steve Yzerman knows how to build teams. Everybody saw what he did in Tampa Bay with the Lightning, so I think it's a good transition. And I think one of the things I'll be looking at all year, outside of the players that are on the field, George, or on the ice, I should say, but the relationship that Steve Yzerman has with Jeff Blashill, the coach.
Yeah, that's a very good observation because, Blashill, I don't want to say he's on a short string, but he probably is, only the fact that, Steve doesn't know him that well, and Jeff doesn't know Steve probably as well. I mean, as far as management goes. But all that being said, Blashill's been a decent coach to try to develop the young talent, but he has not been a winning coach. He has not won, as you know, Scott.
Right.
As the Red Wings know, missing the playoffs for several seasons in a row now.
Right.
And that doesn't suit well with fans that are forking out a lot of money in a brand new arena, as you know. They want to see their wing wheels in the playoffs come April and May.
Well, they did for 25 years in a row. What do you expect? I mean, that's a town that really has an expectation. But, I still understand the fact that a lot of sports, you're going to have good periods and then bad periods. And a lot of those problems is when you're drafting low all the time, it's a lot more difficult to find that hidden gem. But yet the Red Wings did for a lot of years. But ultimately, the retirements of Nicholas Lindstrom, of course, Yzerman, and the beat goes on. In fact, now that that score has gone final, the Red Wings 4, the St. Louis Blues 1. So when you talk about the fact that, you're not drafting inside. In fact, I remember Jimmy Devellano telling me that the Red Wings were a victim of their own success. Paul Woods has talked about that to me many times. And I get the opportunity, thankfully, since the Red Wings are in the Eastern Conference, to see these people a couple times a year, right 20 minutes away from me here in Sunrise, Florida. So, I know what's going on there, and don't lose sight of the fact that even though I'm not there as much as I'd like to be, I do get the NHL package, and I watch a lot of Red Wings games. So,
Oh, yeah. No, that's good. I glad you